Hello, my friend, and welcome back to the Beyond the Shallows podcast. I'm your host, Jason. It is early in the morning, so my voice is nice and low and rich right now. So I hope you're doing just fine and having a wonderful day. And I hope that this podcast finds you drawing closer to the Lord, drawing closer to Him in relationship and the adventure that He has planned for you. He has incredible things planned for you. And I pray that you step into your calling, into all that He has called you to be and all that He has called you to do with authority and passion and love for Him and a desire to see yourself grow. And today we're going to be talking about the thing that I normally start our podcast with, which is youth worship training. Now, why youth worship training? Well, for one, this weekend I have the distinct honor of going up to Chattanooga and being at the Southeastern Youth Leaders Conference that is hosted by the Youth Leader Collective, which is a nonprofit in the Chattanooga area. If you are a youth leader and you are local, you need to get in touch with these guys, and they do a lot. They've got some small group co-ops to help out youth leaders, to give you encouragement, give you some counseling, help you keep fighting the good fight of faith. And yeah, it's just good. You need, if you're in ministry at all, you need another group of people who are doing the same type of ministry speaking into your life. It has been when I first started in ministry here at this church in Dalton. There were a couple pastors groups, there was a prayer group, and there were a couple things in this town that I was involved in, but there wasn't anything specifically for worship leaders. And so a little bit before COVID started and ruined everything, I launched a group of guys, and we would meet once a month. I would provide some breakfast, just some coffee and donuts, or very simple things that my church was more than happy to provide for a meeting of like-minded believers like I wanted to gather. And man, it was incredible to see God come through and work through those meetings and work through work in my life. I've developed some very close friends out of that group who we continue to be in touch long after that group disbanded. And one of my biggest regrets is that I let it fizzle out. Now, there were some other things that we can talk about if you're interested that happened inside of the church and inside of my job and responsibilities that needed to change and shift, that took up the margin space time that I needed in order to prepare for those meetings. But now I'm very passionate about and see the value in having a group of like-minded believers who do what you do. So if you are in ministry, or if you just are a business owner, or if you're in sales, or if you're, just working manual labor somewhere, like find you a group of people who do what you do, who also love the Lord. And if you don't have something like that, then maybe you are the one that God is calling to start a group of like-minded believers to meet together regularly and to pursue the Lord together. Trust me, it will benefit you greatly. And it doesn't have to be a bunch of people. Those few guys that I've stayed in contact with, those relationships are so life-giving to me and my family. We just try to get in touch with a couple of these guys once a month or something like that, and it's incredibly encouraging. So, youthworshiptraining.com, that is the website that I run. I am excited to talk to you about this today. I get a chance to talk about this a lot because it's not something that is I feel like I picked the name because I wanted youth worship training. It kind of tells you what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to help churches who have youth involved in worship ministry at all, at any level, and it's supposed to give them whatever they need for support. So let me tell you a little bit about the idea. I came up with the idea because I realized that I was having a lot of the same discipleship conversations with students over and over and over, and over the last decade, I've always had somebody who was in high school who I was pouring into, mentoring, telling them to read books, teaching them a little bit about guitar or about singing, or helping them as they learn to run rehearsals and pick songs and talk about song theory and song selection and how to use Planning Center and all of that kinds of stuff. And honestly, some of these conversations, it felt like I was saying word for word the same thing over and over again to these students. And so finally, I found myself in a position where we had two really strong seniors who were leading the high school worship team here at our church. And me and the youth guy sat down one day, and kind of in a panic, we realized, oh, they're about to graduate, and we have, what are we gonna do? Like, we've got a couple people who have taken guitar lessons or whatever, but do they really have leadership potential? And I hadn't been mentoring them. I'd been, especially because they were girls, and I've always had a boy to mentor. For the most part, in worship ministry, there's been a couple of exceptions to that, and so we find ourselves going, what are we going to do next semester? We really need to make sure that we have some live worship. That's a high priority for us in our church. We don't want to ever do the YouTube worship thing. We want to use the talents and the gifts that God has given the students who we have available to us in order to advance His kingdom and to bring the church to worship Him in spirit and in truth and in a healthy way. But if we're going to do it in a healthy way, I need to be training a bunch of these kids. And so we made a list of all of the students we thought might be potentials for wanting to be involved in worship ministry. And after making the list, I realized that there were too many students who had potential for me to be able to invest in them individually. Now, is it better to watch a video or to sit across the table from somebody and encourage them face to face? Absolutely, it's always better to sit across the table from somebody and encourage them face to face. But also, my time is very limited. And so I started recording videos just to not even as a replacement to myself. And that's one of the things that I want to make very clear about youth worship training. Youth worship training never replaces people. It only equips them. All right, it'll give you the tools, knowledge, the skills, sometimes the path to develop skills in order to help people, but it never does replace people. You still need a mentor in your life who you are sitting across from regularly if you want to be involved in worship ministry. If you're a student, you need a mentor. Okay, and but a lot of the lessons that a mentor would teach you can be delivered through a video format. So that's what I did. I started recording videos, and I started out with some of the lessons that were nearest and dearest to me, and it was all about making sure that people, how do you stand in front of a group of people? How do you stand on a stage? How do you literally have a spotlight that's coming down on top of you and redirect people's focus to Jesus? Because that is the role of a worship leader. Is they are the friend of the bridegroom. They are the ones who are if the bride of Christ is walking through the double doors of the back of the church, and the groom of Christ, which is the groom of the church, which is Christ, that's how you say that, right? So Jesus is the groom, and he's standing there. My role as a worship leader is to be the best man. And the last thing that you want is for the double doors of the church to fling wide open and for the bride to be staring at the best man. It's the best part of the wedding. And you always want to be watching their eyes to make sure they're looking at each other, falling in love with each other. And so you're to direct the attention and the adoration and the love and that puppy love obsessiveness that a bride has for her soon-to-be husband. You want to make sure, as the best man, that is directed in the right direction. So that's hard to do when you have a spotlight on you, and it takes some training, and it takes some preparation of your heart as a leader beforehand. It takes intentionality. It takes a lot of humility and a willingness to see God be honored and glorified, and you not to receive honor and glory. And that's a mature thing to want to see. And so those were the lessons that I started out teaching. After that, guitar lesson, that's my main instrument, so it made sense to make that. And all the while, like as I'm building this website, I actually met with a bunch of youth leaders and asked them individually, hey, I've got this idea for a website where I would train your youth group. Like what are your needs? What do you need in a website? And I got like a 50-50 split. Every youth leader that I talked to said, yeah, this would be helpful. Yeah, I need something like this. I need some affordable way to be able to resource my worship team. I should be doing this. I don't have time to do this, or I don't know anything about music, and so I need somebody who knows something about music to come on board and or come beside me and help my kids learn more about music. And so I got a lot of feedback saying, yes, this is a needed thing. The feedback that was split 50-50 was some people already had a worship team and they just needed to be more intentional with the messaging to their worship team and their mentoring of the kids on their worship team. And then others had no worship team at all. And as I kept pressing and I kept asking, there were two reasons why churches don't have worship teams. One is because they found themselves in a situation like mine where we had some talent come through, and for 3 or 4 years, that talent dominated the leadership of the worship team, which is wonderful and a huge service to your youth group for the time that they are there. But then they graduate and no one else has been trained or mentored or wants to try to fill those shoes, or the youth leader isn't willing to see a drop in quality in order to give a new kid a chance to come in and learn the leadership that they need to do and kind of fail forward. And so they just don't do anything. And so what we want to do is fix that by making sure that we have the right messaging, the right vision, and all of the tools needed to equip a new leader as early as middle school, catch a vision for being a worship leader for their high school worship ministry. And so if we can always have at least 1 or 2 middle schoolers who are interested and growing and part of youth worship training and being mentored by somebody and have a vision of leadership cast in front of them, then you'll never find yourself in that state where you're like, oh, we had this really talented guy to come through and now we just don't have anybody. Now, you might be thinking, oh, Jason, that sounds great, but my youth group is really small. There's no way that I have a talent pool big enough in order to do that. Now, the thing is, when this was happening, we probably had 20 people in our youth group, about 20 people in our youth group. And in the course of the summer, as I sat down and I trained these kids, almost half of those kids ended up being interested in worship ministry in their youth group. Now, over the course of the next couple months or so, the youth group was growing over the summer and the next year, and so we really spent a year like fostering this type of growth and casting this vision. And now the youth group is much larger. It's 30, 40 people on a Sunday night when our youth group meets. But just to give you an idea, like 20 people is not a lot, but we were able to equip a lot of them. And the percentage, if you look at the numbers of the people in the youth group, okay, this is what I'm talking about. Percentages. It's almost unfair how many people the youth group has involved with their worship ministry, because it's like 25-30% of the entire youth group is involved in worship ministry. Okay, now that's from tech all the way to singing on the stage or playing the box drum or something like that. In big church where I'm most of the time serving, it's more like 0.5% of the total number of people who come to the church are involved in the worship team. It's much more exclusive, but not because we've tried to make it exclusive. It's just we don't have that many adults who are involved in the worship team, and so at this point, Church of 200, I'm having a hard time stocking a 4-piece band with an extra vocalist every Sunday, right? A lot of the times we're doing stripped down acoustic sets because we just don't have the people that we need in order to staff a full band. Drummers, bass players, you guys are a rarity nowadays, and so we really need some new ones to step up. And that was the other part of the issue, is like I'm sitting back going like, wow, we've got 200 people in the church, and I should have closer to 10% of these people involved in worship ministry. That's been my assessment of about how many people are qualified or skilled enough to be a part of a worship ministry in most churches. Is you can usually get about 10% of the people have enough talent to at least carry a tune and get through a worship set very basically. Of course, if you have a really, really high number of people involved on a Sunday morning, if you got 1,000 people at your church, that pool can get more exclusive, and you can get the top tier, the top upper crust of your talent in order to have a really, really excellent, highly skilled worship ministry, and then auditions and everything else that goes with making sure that you have people who are committed spiritually and committed to making sure that they are ready on a Sunday morning and their talent is way high. But at least 10% of your church should be at least skilled enough to help you get through a worship set. And so I'm looking at my church going, all right, there's fewer people who are qualified or even have a desire to lead worship. How do I create a pipeline? How do I create a discipleship pipeline to get more people involved with worship ministry when they're adults? I said, well, I started in high school. Most people start learning instruments in middle school or high school. I think that's the right time to start. And so I started looking at how do people normally get involved in worship ministry. Well, normally a youth leader says, hey, hop on the stage and lead a song. And by the way, don't make it about you. And then the spotlight comes on and a G chord is strummed and they start singing the first song, right? Well, I'm thankful for that youth leader because I needed that. Like everybody who is in worship ministry now needs that, but not everybody's character is to the point where they can sustain ministry with that little instruction. And what it does is it produces song leaders, right? And the goal is not to be able to get through a song. The goal is to be able to lead worship. And so, and the healthiest way to do that is not to see yourself as the worship leader, but as the lead worshiper, right? And so to lay aside some perfectionism, to lay aside a performance mindset, and to see your role in the church as one of service and one that helps people connect with Jesus. That's a huge mental shift, and I didn't adopt that I think I was told that, but I needed to be told that often and in a very powerful way, in a tactile way, when I was early on in worship ministry. And so that's the goal, is to ultimately, youth worship training is designed to help staff the church with higher quality worshipers in our leadership pipeline. And what that means now is that we need a good discipleship program for worship ministry in youth groups. So maybe someday we'll have a whole generation of highly qualified and passionate worshipers who have incredible hearts for worship, incredible humble hearts who want to see God honored and glorified, and they are seeking to get themselves out of the spotlight and seeing Jesus honored. And yeah, that is ultimately the goal. Okay, so let's talk just for a brief moment that's the vision of it. Okay, how practically do we do that? Now, one of the things I alluded to earlier is that there were two types of youth group ministries. There was one that already had bands, and there was one that needed bands. And so I knew that I needed to have content on the website that was both directed at worship teams, established worship teams, and giving kids everything that they needed to start a worship band from scratch. So I started out with a guitar course. On youth worship training, there are instrumental courses right now. As of this recording, there is a guitar course, there is a drum course that are both beginner courses, can take a student all the way from 0 to being able to play top 10 worship songs on guitar, and from 0 to being able to make it through some songs on the drums. There's also a course on there that I teach that is about piano, and it's how to take a classical mindset, how to take somebody who reads sheet music, and some drills and exercises and ways to think about how you play what you play in order to expand your piano to being able to improvise and play chord charts, because those are the two things that you really need to be able to do in order to play with a band. You need to, probably stay on time. That's a biggie. Sometimes classical pianists have a hard time sticking with the metronome. So you want to stay on time, you want to be able to improvise, and you want to be able to play with chord charts. And so I teach you how to take your classical mindset and shift it to be able to understand what the chord chart is asking you to do, and then how to add some improvisational things into your playing in order to be able to actually play and make it sound like worship piano. Now, coming soon, sometime between now and Christmas, and hopefully before the end of October is the goal, we will have also a piano course that is a beginner piano course that will take a student all the way from 0 to being able to play top 10 worship songs, and a bass guitar course. And my good friend Jimmy is planning to help me out and teach those courses. I know they're going to be good because I know that Jimmy's going to be teaching them. I can get by on piano and I can get by on bass, but Jimmy really knows what he's doing, and he has taught those two instruments quite a bit. And so you'll enjoy learning from him if you are in youth worship training. Okay, so you've got instrumental instruction like that. I'll also do a vocal course sometime between now and Christmas as well. So instrumental or vocal instruction. We also have on there stuff about worship ministry. There's worship training 1 and 2 is the name of the course series that I've gone through so far, and those are about 10-minute videos. They've involved discussion questions, and it's talking about worship stuff, how we approach worship, how we are to think about worship, what's our role in worship inside the church. We go through the 4 W's of worship, and just all of the basics to give a framework of how we think and talk and approach worship from a leadership standpoint, or as participants in worship. To be both is a challenge sometimes, and so we need to talk through that quite a bit. So there's worship training courses. There are spiritual enrichment courses, which is either leadership-based or like a sermon that I've preached that can help you kind of piece together some things that you can approach your spiritual growth and enrichment in a new light. A lot of that is based on my book, Beyond the Shallows, that's coming out next spring. And so there is a course in there called Beyond the Shallows that is, it's like the preview to the preview of my book, right? It's 2 steps before you actually get to chapter 1 of my book. But understanding and having an appreciation for the heart and unpacking some of the common advice we get in the church and how to get into like a heart motivated approach to spiritual growth and closeness to God. Okay. Also in there's a Bible study through 1 Corinthians. The reason I put that Bible study in there, it's very in depth. It's pretty intense, and it is intended for high school and above. And it is the reason I put it in there is because part of being in a leadership position is understanding how to engage with culture and how to engage with living as a believer in a world that isn't necessarily all that accepting of believers or hostile to believers. And the culture of the Church of Corinth was so close to a lot of the things that we see as the culture of today that it's worth taking a really close look at and making sure that we understand how God wants us to live as believers in today's world. And so there's a Bible study in there, there's sermons, there's all kinds of stuff. And then there's stuff that is specific to worship leadership, like how do you deal with stage fright? How do you approach that? Is there a biblical model for how to approach stage fright? How do you deal with drama on the worship team? What's the difference between somebody who is causing drama and somebody who is being dramatic on your worship team? That difference is nuanced and requires a little bit of a different approach to how you handle it. And so we talk about that. How do you plan a good worship set? How do you select the songs? How do you run planning center? How you can take over your youth group's planning center and plan all the sets and upload all of the music and everything. And I can show you how to do all of that on the website. And so yeah, there's some very specific tactile things that are kind of more like, man, I wonder how you do this, or I'm struggling with this particular area. How do I approach that? And so, yeah, those are all in the website as well. And so, yeah, that's the goal of youth worship training. And you're going to get really tired of me promoting youth worship training on this website, on this podcast. But you know what? I do believe in it, and I do believe that it's one of the places where the church could very easily be successful in discipling students better in worship ministry. And what I have found, and I'm sure that if you look back at your church's youth group, you might see this as well. The students who are the biggest student leaders in your youth group are probably on the worship team. And part of that is just because if you're standing in front of other people on a Sunday night or a Wednesday night, they see you as a leader. And a lot of the times, the worship team gets just as much time on the stage in front of other students as the youth leader does. And so whether or not you want to be a leader in your youth group, if you are on the worship team, people are going to see you as a leader. And so we might as well equip you to be that leader, to serve your youth group humbly, and to do it in a really healthy way that doesn't burn you out, that doesn't burn you up, but equips you to equip other people to do the work of ministry. And so that's ultimately the goal. And so, Colossians 3:16, we lead songs, hymns, and spiritual songs. But ultimately, if you look at the verses before that, it's so that we can let the word of Christ dwell in us richly, and we can connect with Jesus and get to know him really well. So if you are involved in youth group, or if you know somebody who needs youth worship training, please, you are my marketing plan. Send them this podcast. Let them know about youth worship training. And if you're in the Chattanooga area and you're going to be hanging out on Saturday at the Southeast Youth Leaders Conference, come by my booth. I want to see you. I want to have a conversation with you, and would love to see churches pick up youth worship training and use it to equip the church to be well prepared for the future, and to have a healthy youth worship ministry, so that we can have a healthy worship ministry later on down the road in our churches. God bless you. Thank you for hanging out with me, friend, and I'll talk to you next week.